All right, here are the facts. Marijuana is legal for adult use in 16 states and in Washington, D.C. Medical marijuana is legal in 36 states. And since CBD is legal in every state, you're likely to find it sold everywhere, including at your local gas station. So how do you feel about that? Maybe you're cool with it. But do you have any idea what you're buying when you purchase any of those products? Maybe you're on the other end of the spectrum. I think I was there. You know, if the thought of legal marijuana and CBD scare you, I can relate to that because I was raised with this idea of just say no to drugs. I was told that marijuana is this gateway drug to the more serious ones. Well, we're going to be talking about all of this with Janice Newell Bissex. I've known Janice for decades. We're both registered dietitian, nutritionists, and authors. We ran in the same circles forever until about 5 years ago when she, went off the deep end, or at least that's what it seemed like to me. She became a holistic cannabis practitioner and opened up a whole new business called Cannabis Wellness. But she did get training for this. She completed training and attained her certification from Holistic Cannabis Academy in Greenflower, as well as the University of Vermont End of Life Doula program. She educates health professionals on the therapeutic benefits of cannabinoid therapy. As co-program director of cannabinoid medical sciences and professor of cannabis therapy at John Patrick University School of Integrative and Functional Medicine. That's a big one. She also advises clients on access, proper ratios, dosing, best consumption methods, and cooking with cannabis at her business called Cannabis Wellness. So please help me welcome Janice.
Welcome to the Energize Your Life podcast, hosted by keynote speaker, author, and peak performance expert, Dr. Joe. Listen in as Dr. Joe and her guests talk about how to energize your life so you can be happier, healthier, and more productive.
Welcome, Janice. So good to have you on the show.
It's great to be with you, Dr. Joe.
I haven't seen you in forever, and you can call me Joe. You know you can do that. So,
Okay.
You know, as I mentioned in the introduction, I was a little leery about talking about cannabis and CBD, but then I learned about what you had gone through and how you've been trained and how your whole attitude about this has changed. And I thought I'd have you on the show to share that experience, because maybe there's some people that are like me, a little skeptical about all of this, and are there any health benefits to it? Or maybe they're the ones that are picking up at the gas station, the CBD that you can get it everywhere, and thinking it's doing some good, and maybe that's not the best product for them. So, would you tell? I know the story, but would you tell everyone how you even got down this path in the first place? You and I were very traditional dietitians, and I think we grew up with this, say no to drugs kind of thing. So what happened, Janice?
I was the biggest skeptic of all, Joe. I mean, I used to use air quotes when I said, haha, medical marijuana. Absolutely. I bought into the just say no message. Honestly, I tried it once in college, didn't like it, and that was it. And then 5 years ago, my dad suffered some very severe pain, and they gave him the traditional pain medications because that's what doctors do. They made him very, very groggy and exhausted and severely constipated, so much that required a 4-day hospital stay. So after that hospital stay, I said to his doctor, isn't there anything else we can do? And I said, what about medical marijuana? Because it had just become legal in Massachusetts. And I thought he would say, oh yeah, that's not a good idea. And to my surprise, he said, I think that's a great idea. Wow. And I thought, oh no, now I have to figure, I don't know anything about this. I don't even believe in it. So I started doing research because, good dietitians, good daughters, that's what they do. And the more I learned, the more I thought, are you kidding me? This has been used as medicine for 5,000 years.
Wow.
And I'm just learning about this. I mean, Joe, I don't think you were taught about medical cannabis, the endocannabinoid system, any of this in your training, and I wasn't. So I learned about it. We got my dad certified, brought him to a dispensary. He got a vape pen, some CBD, and he found significant relief from his pain without the side effects. So right that day that he tried it and saw relief, I said, I'm leaving my business of 15 years and I'm going back to school. And I went back to school to become a holistic cannabis practitioner. And that's all I've done for the last 4 years. And let me tell you, it is the most rewarding work I've ever done. Every single day I get emails or texts from my clients saying, I cannot believe it. I have been in pain for all these years. One woman told me last week that it's the first time in 15 years that she didn't take a Percocet. 15 years. She has a chronic condition that is very painful. And she had gone multiple days with 0 Percocet, and she couldn't believe it. And that's just with CBD, a water-soluble, a highly bioavailable CBD product. So it is remarkable. It doesn't work for everybody, for every condition, but when it works, it is really pretty amazing.
And you know what, when you were talking about pain, because I had just listened to a continuing education program that you did, and you were talking about how it works and what conditions it's used for and all of that kind of stuff. And you were talking about pain being the number one condition. And the thing that struck me is I get on occasion these migraines, and I've got this good medicine that can, stop it short, right?
Yes.
And if I take it right away, but maybe I'm out, I don't have it with me, and all of a sudden it turns into a full-blown migraine. And I'm thinking, what a baby I am with a migraine, which, granted, they're painful, but I'm thinking, how would I survive with something like chronic pain where I had it all the time, every day, couldn't get to sleep? And a lot of the clients that you're working with are in that boat, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And now we hear so much about the opioid crisis where people are addicted to that. And I know we're jumping ahead, but you had me sold. And I was thinking, I need to learn more about this. Not that I need it for me, and I'm not going to probably become a holistic cannabis practitioner, but you really opened my eyes to the whole thing. But I had no idea about all these different terms that you were talking about. So I want to break it down for people that may not know, because you mentioned that THC, the psychotropic component of it. You talked about CBD, which in its pure form has no THC. And then there's even other components I had no idea. But you kind of blew my mind when you talked about comparing THC to CBD. And I was wondering if you could kind of throw that out there to tell us a little bit about what the difference is.
Okay. Well, you have a plant, a cannabis plant and a hemp plant. Now, they are both part of the same plant family, Cannabis sativa L. And then you can have a cannabis plant or a hemp plant. Really, the only difference is that the hemp plant has almost no THC. And that's the cannabinoid or the compound.
I think you said 1/100th of the amount of THC.
No,
is that what
it's actually 0.3% THC is the maximum in a hemp plant. That it can be called a hemp plant with less than 0.3%. So it's a very trace amount of THC. Yeah. And THC, it's the cannabinoid that will make you high. It will make you stoned if used in excess. But that's like saying, Joe, if you have a glass of wine, you're going to get drunk. You're not going to get drunk on one glass of wine, probably. If you drink the whole bottle, you very well might get drunk. It's the same with THC. If you have a microdose of THC, it can actually improve your pain, improve a lot of medical conditions without making you high. So it's just knowing how much that you can use. CBD is another compound or cannabinoid in the plant. There are over 100 cannabinoids. The most popular ones are THC and CBD right now. CBD will not make you high, no matter how much you take. It will decrease anxiety. It is neurocalming. It helps with pain. It helps with muscle spasms, as does THC. Both of these parts of the plant are potent anti-inflammatories. So we know that inflammation is a contributor to almost all of our chronic diseases. So if we can quell inflammation with a plant instead of going to the steroids and these pharmaceuticals, then that's a win. So people sometimes take CBD for general wellness. just to quell inflammation, to take the edge off anxiety. You know, if you're working out and you have a little muscle pain, it can help with that. So all of these components in the plant work synergistically together. So you mentioned the cannabinoids. There are also things called terpenes, and that's what's responsible for the smell of the plant. And those have health benefits also. Lavender has a terpene called linalool. Cannabis and hemp have that same terpene, and that's very calming. There are flavonoids. We're dietitians. We talk about fruits and vegetables. Get your antioxidants and your flavonoids. Well, guess what? Hemp and cannabis have flavonoids. So it's actually remarkable that, you know, we talk about green leafy vegetables. Well, here we have a green leafy plant that has so many health benefits when used properly. A chronic condition or pain, or, I mean, it's used for Alzheimer's patients, for Parkinson's, for insomnia, to help people sleep. It really can be a very powerful medicine for many.
Okay, so Janice, you said, you know, I think maybe everybody should be using it, but at the same time, I listened to your continuing education webinar, and you were talking about, you know, there might be some situations and maybe which you need to stop, or you need to dose it differently, or take a different product, or in certain situations that maybe this isn't the best drug. So, I mean, there are exceptions, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
So kids and teenagers, unless there is a medical reason, and CBD is a very potent anti-epileptic. That's what Sanjay Gupta did a documentary called Weed. And it was following a little girl who had 200 seizures a day. They started her on CBD therapy, and she had 1 or 2 a week. And he was so blown away, because he was like we are or were with the stigma and not believing that it is medicine. So it's, you know, it's out there, and
So the product that we can get, CBD, it's been purified, so it has no THC, or it could have a minimal amount still.
Well, a CBD product that you get on the market could have a trace amount of THC, not enough to make you high or impaired in any way. But
what about though if they're doing drug testing?
Then you want to get a CBD product that has 0 THC.
But you can get that. It'll be labeled as such.
Yes. So when I started this business, I looked for a brand that I could recommend that had 0 THC, and I found an organically grown product in Colorado that I was going to recommend. And they told me they don't sell retail, only wholesale. So I ended up actually buying it from them for my clients, so that I know that they have the best quality product. So it has 0 THC, because I have
your
law
products have
enforcement.
0. Yeah.
They have 0. Yes. And that's not to say that the little is a bad thing, but that's just the choice that I made because of my clients.
And of course, you're probably selling across state lines, and you know that there's different rules in different states. So if you are permitted to purchase medical marijuana, then you're buying THC in its pure form, or are you buying something else?
Well, see, when you say in its pure form, there's a misconception here. In the pure form, you can get a pharmaceutical, which is a synthetic THC, just the THC molecule. That's not the most efficacious, right?
Okay.
The beauty of the plant,
you can get that as a drug. Like you can purchase it only as a drug. But that doesn't work as well as more of the whole plant.
Exactly. That would be like you saying to your client, well, broccoli is good for you, but instead of eating broccoli, just take a vitamin A pill. It's very, very different. The beauty of the broccoli, the beauty of the hemp and cannabis plants lies in the synergy between all these compounds that work together. So if you take what you would call pure or synthetic isolate, so if you see the word isolate on a CBD product, that is not anything I would recommend. It's very cheap. An isolate product is very, very cheap, but it doesn't have any of these other components to boost the efficacy, and it results in more side effects. So no isolate. You want either broad spectrum, which means the whole spectrum of the plant, or full spectrum. The broad spectrum has no THC. The full spectrum is the whole plant with THC. And either of those would be a good a good
So,
option.
hey, how's your energy today? Have you taken the quiz? To take my 10-question energy quiz, go to drjo.com/energy quiz. That's drjo.com/energy quiz. After you get your results, we'll also send you 21 ways to beat the afternoon slump, about quick little tips you can do to boost your energy right now. So when you go into these stores that sell medical marijuana, and I've never been there because I guess I can't get in there without a card.
Right.
But if I do, they will be selling more of the full spectrum and the broad spectrum. And will my card tell me which one I could buy, or is it?
You can buy, if you have a medical marijuana card, you can buy anything. You can buy a product that is very, very high in THC. Or you can buy a product that has mostly CBD. And it really depends on your condition. But oftentimes a mixture of the two for medical patients. I brought a client last week to a dispensary, and we looked at each product. She's got lung cancer. And so we looked at the products to see, okay, this one has this particular terpene, which is good for appetite, which she's lost a lot of weight. Now, some people don't want to get the munchies when they use cannabis. That's a bad thing for some people.
Right.
But for many of our clients that have cancer or elderly people, my dad lost his appetite. So I wanted something that would stimulate his appetite. So you really just have to know the nuances of when you look at a product, how much THC, how much CBD. There's CBN, that's another cannabinoid that can be helpful for sleep. So you really have to understand all the different components of the plant before you make a decision. And you want to make sure when you buy a product, whether it's for most people, it will be a CBD product. I mean, my clients, 99% find relief with a CBD, a broad spectrum CBD product. You want to make sure that it's good quality. You want to make sure that wherever you buy it, that you ask for a certificate of analysis, because the FDA did a study and found that 70% of the products out there are mislabeled. And Joe, some of them have zero CBD because it's an expensive process to organically grow, harvest, dry, cure, extract, and make products. It's not cheap. So there were the bad guys out there who looked and said, hey, I can put olive oil in a little bottle, put a CBD label on it, and charge $100. And
we know that there's a strong placebo effect in which people might take it thinking they're going to get some benefits and actually feel better. But I guess over time that would kind of wear off. They wouldn't be feeling
exactly.
it. Yeah.
And we have double-blind placebo-controlled trials, which you and I are always looking for, because we want that. We want one group not to know what they're getting. And there's lots of people say, oh, there's not enough research. There is a lot of research on the medical benefits of cannabis and CBD. Now, we have to have more, and the only way that's going to happen is if we legalize this plant. And I am a strong
Can we
proponent.
talk about legalizing, because you shared some statistics, because I don't even know where we are in Florida. I probably should keep up with it. But there are a lot of states that are legalizing recreational marijuana.
Yeah.
And as an older person who kind of grew up in that hippie era, I'm like, oh, do we really want that? What do you think?
Well, what I think today is very different than what I thought 5 years ago. So 17 states do allow for, I call it adult use cannabis use, and 37 states allow for medical cannabis use. So in the states where cannabis has become legalized, teen use has either stayed the same or dropped. Do you know what the fastest growing segment is that's using cannabis? Those over 65. There's been a tenfold increase. Why do you think that is? Because once you get at beyond 65, you have a few more aches and pains. So that's why a lot of the older people, our seniors, are turning to it. I mean, some nursing homes and assisted living. I work with an assisted living, a senior living place in Maryland and Virginia. They actually have CBD on their nurses' cart for people, and they allow medical cannabis. The impact on Alzheimer's, decreasing the agitation of Alzheimer's disease, is pretty profound. And in end-of-life situations, which I am very passionate about, it can really provide comfort without giving someone a huge dose of morphine, which just completely drugs them up, and they're not able to communicate. So cannabis at end of life, to me, is brilliant. And it doesn't mean that people are there with smoking a joint.
Can we talk about that? All the different forms, because how can you get into a dispensary? What are they called? Dispensary. Because you have your license?
I have a caregiver card for my client. So anyone who gets certified for a medical cannabis card can appoint a caregiver so that they can go with them to help them choose. So it could be a spouse, it could be a friend, it could be I'm a friend and a professional. So I was able to go and help her choose the products. But yes, you can, I think in most states, you can have a caregiver. I mean, some people are too sick to leave their home, right? If you have end stage, any kind of a disease, you want someone to be able to do
but
that.
I do know that you said that your dad had to go in there by himself because
he did, because I didn't understand. I knew nothing about this. So when we got there, they said, no, you can't come in. Are you a caregiver? I said, well, yes, I'm his caregiver. And they said, well, do you have a card? I said, no.
Where do you get this card? From the doctor?
After you get certified, you just, in Massachusetts anyway, you apply to the state. The patient has to identify you, and then you get a PIN, and then you go online and you register, and then they send you a caregiver card.
Oh, okay. Good to know. And every state is that way?
Well, I don't know that every state is that way. A lot of them are, but every state has its own rules and nuances. But again, if we can make it legal nationwide, and again, the states that have legalization, there's a 44% decrease in opioid deaths. We lose 100 people every single day to opioid overdoses. There are many people who've been affected personally by this. It is tragic. And nobody wants to be addicted to opioids, but they were prescribed opioids legally and they took them, and it is so physically addictive. So cannabis is not a gateway drug. It's an exit herb. It helps people get off of opioids, because if you add cannabis to your regime, you can decrease your dose of opioids or even get rid of them altogether and just use the cannabis. So we talked about ways that you can take it other than smoking a joint. So there are tinctures. You can put a little tincture under your tongue. It's absorbed within 15 minutes.
Is that a drop? Is that what that means, a tincture?
Yes.
A drop.
It's an eyedropper, and you can put a quarter of a dropper under your tongue. You can put 5 drops under your tongue. It depends on the product. Then there are water-soluble tinctures. So you put 5 drops in a little bit of water and you drink it. That's absorbed very, very quickly. There are edibles. So you can eat something that takes the longest to see an effect. It could take an hour to 2 hours, but it lasts longer.
Now, you had a warning about the edibles.
Oh, yeah. If someone is not used to taking an edible that has THC in it, they can run into some serious issues. Because it takes 2 hours to see the full effect, people will take a couple of bites of an edible and they'll wait a half hour, maybe even an hour, and say, I don't feel anything. This must not be that effective or concentrated. So they eat the whole cookie or brownie. And then an hour later, they are completely stoned, paranoid, racing heart, dry mouth. And honestly, people think they're going to die. It is that uncomfortable if you take too much. No one in history has ever died of a cannabis overdose, but there are many people who eat too much of an edible who feel like they might die. So you have to take a small amount and wait 2 hours, minimum 2 hours. If it's your first time using an edible, the next day take the same dose, because sometimes the very first dose, you will not see an effect. It's not until the second dose, because your body now realizes it, recognizes it. So same dose today and tomorrow. If you still don't see an effect, then day 3, have a little bit more, not a lot more, a little bit more. And then you find your dose. Dispensaries typically have edibles in 10 milligram portions. So if you buy a chocolate bar, it's got lines in it to break it into 10 milligrams is way too much for a first-time user. Way, 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 way too much. I advise people to take that and cut it into quarters. Take a quarter today and a quarter tomorrow. If you didn't see an effect on day 2, the next day, take a half and then go from there.
Okay.
There are also topicals, Joe. You can
yes.
get a topical. So it's pretty amazing what a topical can do. People who have eczema, psoriasis, hives, TMJ, migraines, putting a CBD salve on your head when you have a migraine. I have a client who's a teacher, and she keeps a jar in her classroom, and the kids know if she starts putting salve on her forehead, back off, because it means she's coming down with a migraine.
Oh, wow.
So there are multiple ways to get relief. And some, especially elderly people, some of them like to start with a topical because they're just afraid of ingesting something. And then once they find relief, maybe they put it on their knee because they have arthritis. And they say, wow, this is pretty amazing. And then I say, well, you can attack the inflammation from the inside and the outside if you add a little bit of tincture. So,
because the topical is only going to affect that joint or area that you applied it to. You're not going to get it within the rest of your body?
Yes, it will not help with anxiety unless, because you're not in as much pain, it would help. But it does not affect, if you put it on your knee, you will not get relief for your elbow or your back or anything else.
Interesting. All right. And so you've mentioned a lot of things: pain relief, helping with sleep and anxiety. You even talked about the research with seizures, eczema, psoriasis, migraines.
IBS.
You didn't even mention IBS, but you did mention it in your CEU course because it helps with the inflammation, right?
Yes, it helps not only with the inflammation, but there is a connection. We know about the brain and gut connection, right? Mm-hmm. There are receptors in the places where the cannabinoids, whether in the plant, and I didn't even mention that we also make a couple of these cannabinoids. So this THC and CBD, we make at least 2 in our own bodies. So we've got these, it's like a lock and key. We've got these, what are called receptors all over our body. What happens is the CBD or the THC affect these receptors and cause something to happen. And that would be decreasing anxiety, decreasing the signaling of the pain. So, and there are a lot of these receptors in our gut. So it can calm the gut. It can decrease the inflammation. It's remarkable what it can do.
Okay, but Janice, you know that expression, if it sounds too good to be true.
Yes.
Well, address that one.
It does.
Yeah.
It sounds, and I would agree with you, until you understand that we have what's called the endocannabinoid system, which it's been proven. I mean, we have these receptors, and we have, from head to toe, we have receptors in our brain, we have receptors in our feet. So we have these receptors where the cannabinoids from the plant or those that we make, they can see what happens when it attaches, whether CBD, it can influence those receptors. CBD doesn't actually fit. THC fits exactly. CBD alters it. So to cause an effect. So the more you learn, the more you understand what the whole purpose of this endocannabinoid system is: homeostasis, or balance. So if you have I have clients with constipation who see amazing relief using CBD. I have clients who have diarrhea who also see an improvement. That makes no sense at all, right? It doesn't make sense until you understand that this system, the role of this system is homeostasis. And
so getting the body back in balance, whether you got too much or too little, it's getting it back in balance. Okay, so, but you did have some kind of cautions that there are certain people that probably, because of their condition or whatnot, probably are not candidates.
There are a few. There are some cancer patients who are undergoing immunotherapy, and we might, because CBD is an modulator, right? Immunomodulator, which means people with autoimmune diseases, CBD can be very helpful for them because it prevents your body from sort of reacting.
Overreacting.
Overreacting, exactly. But if you're having cancer treatment and they want your body, this immunotherapy, you don't want to quell that. So that's one. If someone is taking Coumadin or warfarin, it doesn't mean they can't use CBD. It means that you don't want to take a soft gel or an edible at the exact same time as your Coumadin because they're both processed in the liver by the same enzyme. So you just have to separate it by a few hours or use a tincture.
So it's a good idea to talk to a holistic cannabis practitioner, it sounds like, someone who can look at the whole situation, right? Okay.
Yes.
And the people at the gas station that sell CBD, they don't have that?
They don't have that knowledge. I actually went into a smoke shop once. There was a big sign that said CBD. So I went in and I said, so can you tell me about CBD? What, I might want to try it. It's like, I have no idea. See that case over there? They bring more every day.
Oh my gosh. What about it at the dispensary? Did you feel like you were getting good advice from the people that work there?
I would say that it's variable. Some of them are knowledgeable. Some of them just have experience using cannabis. But I think we're getting better. I do think we're getting better. I think their baseline knowledge is, for the most part, is pretty good. Although when my dad went in, they gave him a particular cultivar, they call them strains, that was an appetite suppressant. So they didn't look at him as a whole person. They looked at him, he said he had pain. Oh, I know someone who used this and it helped with their pain. Right. Whereas when I went with my friend, I asked the person, I said, I looked at one and it had THCV, which is another cannabinoid that can decrease appetite. And she gave it to me for my friend. And I said, oh, this has THCV. This is an appetite suppressant. So I don't think they fully understand the nuances, most of them.
Well, that's good to know, to search out somebody like you. Let's end the discussion here because I know we're running out of time. If people want to learn more about what you do, learn more about the science behind it all, how can they reach you? Well,
I have a website. It's janibiswellness.com, Janibis Wellness, and like cannabis with a J. And I have oodles of resources. I have research studies. So if someone says, gee, I have ADHD, then you can go on my website, you go under resources and you look under ADHD and you can look at all the studies that have been done.
Oh, fabulous. ADHD. Okay.
And then,
and then you're also available for consultation as well.
Yes. I do consultations all the time and just help people figure out dosing because that's something that's very individual. Some people can find relief with 4 drops of CBD, water soluble, and I have another client who uses 30 drops because she has severe pain. So we always start low. At the very lowest, we start with that little tiny dose and then we work our way up because, I want people to find that minimum effective dose. Well, Janice, this has been so enlightening for me. Hopefully for the rest of you out there listening to this interview, I hope to learn more in the future. But thanks so much for coming on the show. You're welcome. Good to be with you. All right. See y'all next week. Bye-bye.